This hearing took a dramatic turn after Senator Elissa Slotkin warned about the possibility of the military being used during future U.S. elections. As tensions over Iran, rising gas prices, and Trump's past election actions collided, Slotkin directly asked Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth whether he would refuse an order to seize ballots or voting machines.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you're here to ask for $1.5 trillion, 40% more than what we gave you last year, $1 trillion. And I agree with the chairman of this committee that the world has never been more dangerous and complicated. And regardless of whether we disagree on the reasons for getting into this war, I think we can all agree that we want our military to come out of it safely and successfully and as soon as feasible. The military has taken, the administration has taken military action in 10 different places in the world in 15 months, more than any president in U.S. history. I think President Trump has really become a foreign policy president. And many of those operations, were on the news for a couple of days, but then the American public didn't feel them. And I think the difference with this war with Iran is that the American public is feeling it in their pocketbooks. Gas in Michigan is $4.99 today. The cost of fertilizer, of airline tickets, things that are real to people. Secretary Hegseth, the president said that you were most keen on this war. He said that you were the most gung-ho about it. I think despite us all wanting to come out of this successfully, it is hard to miss that we are at the stalemate, that we don't control the Strait of Hormuz because shipping is not getting through. And we can block what they're trying to get through, but nothing is moving, and it's costing the American public. And I think that's a fundamentally different moment than the rest of the military action we've taken. Even in Middle East 101 class, we used to talk about and run war games on the Strait of Hormuz. It's a strategic geography that the Iranians have. And I think it's just concerning to me that we can try and tell the American people that it's going great and we're killing it, but until the Strait of Hormuz is open, I don't think we can credibly say that with any seriousness. I think the question I have for you, though, is future-looking, and it's our 2026 elections. The president has been very clear. He said in the State of the Union that essentially if his side doesn't win, then the election was rigged. He said that before the 2020 election. He's asked for voter rolls for 29 different states. He just asked for Detroit's votes or ballots. And we know that in 2020, he wrote an executive order that he didn't sign that said to the U.S. military, to the Secretary of Defense, you should go and seize ballots and voting machines. A few months ago, he said that he regretted that he didn't sign that executive order. So the U.S. military has never been deployed. You incorrectly said yesterday that they were deployed during different elections. Governors deployed them under their authorities, but the federal government has never put the uniformed military at our polls during World War II, right after 9/11. We've never had to do that. So, Secretary Hegseth, if the president, who regrets not signing that executive order to the then SecDef in 2020, asks you to seize ballots or voting machines in states during the 2026 election, will you stand up for the Constitution and say no, or will you salute and do his bidding?
Senator, I didn't get a chance to answer the front part of your question, which, there was a lot of deferred maintenance under the Biden administration that needed to be addressed because the world was in chaos when President Trump was elected because of—
Just address the election issue, please.
Well, again, that's
the most important thing. It's what's happening.
It's yet another gotcha hypothetical, which is your specialty.
It's not. We had an executive order
under the Biden administration in
that your predecessor had to
2024.
hold. It's not a hypothetical. I refuse to accept. You give that answer all the time. You and I have done this dance before. Get over it, okay? In 2020, He's the president, your boss, the guy you're performing for right now, told the journalists this year that he wished he signed that executive order to your predecessor. And your predecessor said publicly, thank God, we didn't actually go forward with it. What are you going to do? You're the guy here in the seat. It's not hypothetical. Tell the American people, will you deploy the uniformed military to our polls to collect voter rolls or machines?
Are you accusing me of performing? Because you're performing for cable news right now.
But Mr. Secretary, we have
it's a hypothetical. By the way, in 2024, under the Biden administration, 15 states did deploy
under their governor's authority when their governors asked for it.
What did Joe Biden say about that?
That's fundamentally, I don't think anything, because he needed them for cybersecurity and for COVID. Trump did it too, under Trump. But it was not the federal decision. It was those governors of the states under their authorities, okay? It's never been done in our history. Please stand up for the Constitution. Do not send uniformed military to our polls.
Do you have a response to that portion of the question, Mr. Secretary?
I've never been ordered to do anything illegal, and I won't. That goes without saying.
Thank you for the answer.
This hearing started as a debate about war, defense spending, and America's growing military involvement overseas. But by the end, it transformed into something much more serious. A direct confrontation over whether the U.S. military could ever be used in American elections. Senator Elissa Slotkin approached the hearing from two connected angles. First, she focused on the escalating conflict with Iran and its economic consequences for ordinary Americans. And second, she connected that growing instability to broader fears about executive power and democratic institutions at home. That combination made this hearing especially significant. Slotkin began by acknowledging that the world is becoming increasingly dangerous and that America's military faces real global threats. But she also pointed out something many Americans are now feeling directly: the economic cost of conflict. She argued that unlike previous military operations that felt distant to the public, this confrontation with Iran is affecting people immediately through rising gas prices, higher airline costs, and broader economic pressure. And politically, that matters because support for military action often changes once Americans begin feeling financial pain in their daily lives. But the hearing became dramatically more intense once Slotkin shifted toward the 2026 elections. She brought up President Trump's past comments about voter fraud, efforts to challenge election outcomes, and reports that during 2020 there were discussions involving possible executive orders related to voting machines and ballots. Then she asked the question that changed the tone of the entire hearing. If Trump ordered the military to seize ballots or voting machines during a future election, would Hegseth refuse? That was the moment the room tightened. Because this wasn't framed as a normal policy disagreement. It was framed as a constitutional test. Hegseth immediately tried to dismiss the question as a hypothetical and accused Slotkin of performing for cable news. But Slotkin refused to back down. She argued this was not theoretical because Trump himself publicly expressed regret that he never signed a draft executive order after the 2020 election. And that's what made this exchange so politically explosive. Slotkin was essentially asking whether loyalty to the Constitution would outweigh loyalty to a president in a moment of political crisis. Throughout the hearing, she repeatedly emphasized one key point. The federal government has never deployed uniformed military forces to seize ballots or voting machines during American elections. That distinction mattered because she was drawing a line between governors using National Guard resources for localized security support and the federal government using military power directly in election administration. By the end of the exchange, Hegseth finally gave the answer Slotkin had been trying to force out of him. "I've never been ordered to do anything illegal, and I won't." That line will likely become the headline moment from this hearing. Supporters of Hegseth will argue he ultimately answered appropriately, and that Slotkin was manufacturing fear around unrealistic scenarios for political effect. Critics, however, will argue the hesitation itself was alarming, especially given Trump's past rhetoric surrounding elections and executive authority. And honestly, that's the deeper issue underneath this hearing. This wasn't just about one hypothetical order. It was about growing public anxiety over the boundaries of presidential power, the role of the military in democracy, and whether institutional guardrails would hold during a future constitutional crisis. Because once Americans begin openly debating whether the military could become involved in election disputes, It signals a level of political distrust that would have been almost unimaginable in previous generations. And that alone makes this hearing significant far beyond Washington politics. Let me know what you think in the comments. Was Slotkin raising legitimate constitutional concerns? Or was this another partisan hypothetical designed to generate fear and headlines? And for more political analysis and hearing breakdowns, subscribe to the State Lens.